Hey friends, this week's a big one. You've been asking for me to show you how to make a watercolor palette using a vintage tin, and the time has finally come. On this channel, friends, we are obsessed with watercolor, and you can expect to learn here how to make art for joy's sake. Do you want to paint with me? Make a palette with me? Come on, let's go. Okay, friends, here we go. You're gonna need some type of set of watercolors in tubes. Pretty simple. You pick what you like. I am using this Gen Craft set. This was sent to me for free, which is super awesome. Thank you so much. You're also gonna need little half pans. You can find these on Amazon. Just search half pans. And then teeny tiny magnets, also Amazon. A palette knife, maybe. And of course, your vintage palette. Here's the thing, friends, you need to plan to make a mess because for me, this process is super messy. I own that. I'm okay with that. So I do love to have a wet paper towel on hand so that I can wipe up and kind of reset my station, so to speak, at any given time. All right, let's get into these and see what we've got here. If you're not sure what watercolor set to pick up to do this with, you can head to my Amazon link. It's in the info section below, and you can see a bunch of different tube sets that I recommend. One that I love so much is Mission Gold. It's a set of 36. It's fantastic. Now, something to think about. This set is 50 tubes. It's big. So I had to choose a tin that I knew was going to be a good fit. You might want to have a couple of tins on hand. I know you're probably like, wait, I have to buy a couple tins just to make one, but I promise you, you'll use them all eventually. But you do want to think about size. So if you're a mathematician or someone who likes numbers, you can just figure out what you need in terms of the dimensions of your half pan. And then of course, the footprint and the dimensions of the base of your vintage watercolor tin. I usually just eyeball it, and yeah, I get myself into trouble doing that sometimes, but it served me pretty well. I am a free spirit. I think y'all know that by now, but I do like to stay organized when it comes to this particular process, especially with a bigger set. So I am laying out all these tubes, and then I'm going to go ahead and lay out all of my labeled half pans right above these tubes. You'll see what I'm talking about. We'll get to that really soon, I promise. Okay, friends, you're also going to need a Sharpie. I feel like I forgot to tell you that in the beginning, but some type of permanent fine tipped pen or marker is really important because this part of the process, in my humble opinion, is super integral. So you're going to label each and every one of your half pans. One side, I always use the two longest sides because some of these color names, you know, friends, are like so long. And one side, you're going to have your color name. And then on the other side, you want to put your brand name. And here's why. I think you can guess. Because if you run out of a favorite color, you really want to know what the brand was and what the name of that color was. So this is a good amount of work for that possibility in the future. But let me tell you, I've been in a place where I've run out of a favorite color. And because I didn't do this step, I have absolutely no clue what that color was. And it's kind of a bummer. So label your half pans, friends. Remember, friends, this is a cathartic exercise. It's a ritual of sorts. I know I use that word a lot. If you didn't watch last week's video, you might want to go check it out because I do talk about the importance and kind of making a ritual out of certain acts of art making. So check that out. But this is so cathartic, and this can become, and I think that's why I collect watercolor palettes, at least part of the reason, because the act of actually making them is so relaxing for me. So something to keep in mind. And friends, if you haven't had the chance yet, could you go ahead and give this video a boop? It's a like. It just means you're having a good time and you want to show me some love. I would so appreciate it. Look at that. Isn't that so incredibly satisfying? Like I said, I went ahead and set all of those labeled half pans out right above the tubes. It keeps me organized and it keeps my brain from going on overdrive during this part of the process. here's where the magic happens. This is the stuff of like viral paint videos on TikTok and Instagram. Like, the super soothing, satisfying moment where you squirt the paint out of the tube into the half pan. And you're going to do this times however many tubes you have. Okay. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. You squeeze in the paint. That's a given. I like to do some combination of tapping gently on the half pan. I also will bring in a palette knife to kind of smooth out and push that pigment down so my half pan is nice and as uniformly filled as possible. And then sometimes I also use a paintbrush to do the same thing that a palette knife could do. The only thing about the palette knife, you'll notice mine is metal. And so you've put in all of those magnets, and don't forget to put those magnets in. I didn't mention it yet, but you've got to put your magnets in every single one of your half pans. I do them one at a time because if you try to put those crazy strong magnets in all of your half pans while they're all lined up with your tubes, you can only imagine the chaos that ensues. It's insane. So I literally pick up my half pan, put the magnet in, and then squeeze the paint in, and I repeat that. I do not put the magnets in ahead of time. Get that pigment in there, tap, tap, tap on the table, do a little pushing down with a palette knife. I would use a plastic one or a brush, and just keep repeating that process. Now, some people like to have their pigments kind of mounded over on the top of the half pan because that accounts for shrinkage. So yes, as these dry, friends, they will shrink. The pigment will shrink. So that's the reason for having a little bit of a mound on top. So that will come with time and understanding how much of a hump you need to have on top of your half pan. But don't stress over this part. Just fill her up and move on with life. It's really all good because you can always add more later. You can always add more wet pigment right from the tube inside of an already dried half pan full of paint. If you're anything like me at this point in the process, your hands are literally covered in pigment. And that's okay. This is a messy process. Something that I do to kind of keep that at bay is have a wet piece of paper towel or like several on hand so that I can kind of wipe up as I go. But embrace the mess. It's all part of the process. Let's keep going. And so we go and go and go and go. And friends, here's the thing. This part of the process, you do you. You figure out how you want to fill these. You can fill and then put them right into the palette. You can fill your half pans and then make a little pile on the side and fill your vintage palette all at the end. I will caution you, again, remember how strong these magnets are. They're insane. So when you have your little half pans filled with the little magnets inside and you start setting all those half pans next to one another, you do run the risk of like chaos happening and those magnets just activating and the half pans smashing into one another. I kid you not, it happens. So I tend to lean more towards the fill the palette with the half pans as you go. All right, friends, enough talk about the crazy magnets, but seriously, just something to keep in mind. Now, at this point in the process, you might be getting really messy. You might have paint everywhere. It might start to feel a little panicky. And I'm just reminding you of this. I'm bringing it up really, not reminding because I haven't really talked about it yet. Christ your eyes. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, because it can happen with this process because you've got all these little parts and you've got paint all over you potentially. I mean, maybe you're a lot cleaner than I hope you are because I'm a bit of a mess when I paint. But if it's feeling overwhelming, I just say get up, take a break, wash your hands. And I know this might sound silly, like I'm telling grown people to wash their hands, but it's crazy how when you get into a tedious process like this, you can get tunnel vision and you can be getting super frustrated and like forget to breathe and forget to like take a beat, take a break. So this is just my reminder to you to do that for yourself, because if this is starting to feel stressful and like your magnets are jumping everywhere and your paint, like just take a moment. Take a moment. Now you might be wondering, Christy, my palette came in, it's kind of dirty. There's even a tray inside with the old paint in it. What do I do with it? How do I get this palette ready? So friends, I don't do much when it comes to preparing palettes. I have actually ordered handmade watercolors online that come in vintage palettes, and some folks will literally like sand down the surface and spray it over again with some type of like stain blocking spray paint and make it all No, I don't do all that. You certainly can, but there's probably another YouTube video that is going to be better for that. I will clean my palette. Of course, though, if there's already paints in it, there's another tray. The best thing that I have found, use your palette knife, use something, even a pencil, something that you don't really care much about, and you're going to have to pry that tray out. If the tray's plastic, great, easy, done and done. It'll pop right out. I want to forewarn you, this palette's tray was metal. This was legit vintage. It was probably from the 40s or 50s. And when you pry this bad boy out, it's going to fight you a little bit. So just be careful. Those edges are sharp. I'm not trying to talk to you like a child, but I'm just speaking from experience, and I have gotten cut on these bad boys in the past. So I just want you to be careful. All right. Once that bad boy is out, it can be fun. You might want to save it. Maybe you want to experiment with those pigments, crush them up, make new pigments. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily throw them out, but that's just me. Clean everything up, a little bit of Windex, whatever you use for that kind of thing, and you're off and running. Good to go. All right, friends, this is the time when you get to just enjoy the fruits of your labor. So this palette is going to take a couple days or a couple weeks to cure. It just really depends on the brand of paint you've chosen. But just know, you can paint with it when it's not fully dry. And so much so that I typically swatch out a new palette like this when it's completely fresh and I have just created it. And I'm going to do that for you now so you can see. And the colors might act a little differently when you're using them when things aren't fully cured. But let's go ahead and swatch this gorgeous thing out. Oh, so fun, so fun. All right, friends, I want you to hit me up in comments, like this video, do all the things that you're supposed to do on YouTube. I do want to hear from you though. If you have decided to make a vintage palette, if I've inspired you in any way, please let me know in comments. And I know you're going to have questions, so hit me up. Hit me up because I answer all of your comments. All right, friends, all the supply lists are in the info section here below, so check it out. And happy painting, y'all. I'm not Southern. I just say y'all. I don't know why, but happy painting. Until next time.